Hello and welcome to Quiz Time. I'm Jess, and today I have a quiz on the 1950s. So, do you remember the food, the clothing, the fabrics, and the cars of that generation? Let's find out. What was the name of the controversial 1951 film starring Marlon Brando as Stanley Kowalski? A Streetcar Named Desire. What household appliance, first mass-produced by Raytheon in 1947, became a common kitchen fixture in American homes during the 50s? The microwave oven. Which American poet published Howl in 1956, becoming a defining work of the Beat generation? Allen Ginsberg. Which American car manufacturer introduced the Thunderbird in 1955? Ford. What television game show hosted by Groucho Marx featured the famous line, "Say the secret word and win $100"? You Bet Your Life. What popular fabric pattern featuring abstract atomic and molecular designs dominated 1950s interior decor? Boomerang pattern or the atomic pattern? What was the name of the rebellious youth subculture in the 1950s known for their leather jackets and motorcycle riding? Greasers. What major technological breakthrough did Texas Instruments introduce in 1954 that revolutionized electronics? Silicon transistor or first commercial silicon transistor? What was the title of the 1953 film that featured Marilyn Monroe's iconic scene standing over a subway grate? The 7-Year Itch. What political term was coined in 1950 by Senator Joseph McCarthy to describe alleged communist sympathizers in the US government? Red Scare or McCarthyism? Which 1950s hairstyle for women required setting wet hair in pin curls and sleeping on them overnight? The poodle cut or bob cut? What iconic American institution did Ray Kroc purchase from the McDonald's brothers in 1955? McDonald's. What handheld beauty tool became popular in 1950s after the Schick company introduced the first electric version for women? electric razor, or the lady chic? What toy consisting of a plastic hoop that is twirled around the waist became a nationwide sensation in 1958? The hula hoop. What method of watching movies became popular in suburban America during the 1950s, often allowing entire families to view films from their cars? Drive-in theatres, or the drive-in movies? What magazine for African Americans, founded by John H. Johnson in 1951, became an important voice during the early civil rights movement? Jet magazine. What popular women's accessory, often made of chiffon, was tied around the neck or head and became a symbol of 1950s feminine style? Silk scarf. What was the name of the first major credit card launched in 1950 that could be used at multiple establishments? Diners Club card. What famous housewife character did Lucille Ball portray in a groundbreaking sitcom that debuted in 1951? Lucy Ricardo. What 1950s dance move involved swinging out a partner only to be pulled back in and was associated with early rock and roll? The jitterbug. What children's book character created by the Belgian cartoonist Hergé gained popularity in America during the 1950s with his adventures of a young reporter? Yes, Hergé's Adventures of Tintin. What article of women's clothing featured an elasticized waist and extending from the waist mid-thigh and was worn to shape like the figure under a dress? It was a girdle. What political religious movement added the phrase "under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance in 1954? The Cold War anti-communist movement? What interior design style featuring bold angles, atomic motifs, and space-age influences dominated American homes in the 1950s? Mid-century modern? What term described the migration of middle-class white Americans from urban centres to news housing developments outside city limits during the 1950s? White flight. What cosmetic item, often in bright red shades, became an essential part of the glamorous 1950s female look pioneered by Marilyn Monroe? Yep, the bright red lipstick. What medical breakthrough, announced by Dr. Jonas Salk in 1955, helped nearly eradicate a dreaded childhood disease? The polio vaccine. What material, introduced for furniture in the early 1950s, allowed for the creation of colourful wipe-clean kitchen chairs and tables? Formica. What two-word phrase described the planned suburban housing developments built by William Levitt after World War II that expanded significantly in the 1950s? Levittown or Levitt Towns. What musical instrument became a symbol of rock and roll in the 1950s, especially as played by Chuck Berry and Elvis Presley? The electric guitar. What dessert, often served in tall glasses with whipped cream and a cherry on top, became a staple of 1950s soda fountains? Ice cream sundae or banana split? What type of pants ending just below the knee became fashionable for women in the 1950s after being worn by Hollywood stars like Audrey Hepburn? Capri pants or pedal pushers? What innovation did Western Union introduce in 1950 that allowed consumers to pay for goods without cash? Credit card or charge card? What controversial comic book genre led to Senate hearings and the creation of the Comic Code Authority in 1954? Horror comics. What type of processed meat product introduced by Hummel in 1937 became an American staple during the 1950s due to its convenience and long shelf life? Spam. What was the name of the early warning system established in 1957 to detect incoming Soviet bombers over the Arctic? Dew line or distant early warning line? What consumer durables company introduced the first mass market automatic electric coffee percolator in 1952? General Electric. What two-word term described the educational approach that emphasized science and mathematics in American schools after the Soviet launch of Sputnik? Space race. What cocktail mixing vodka and ginger beer in a copper mug became popular in America during the 1950s as relations with Russia cooled? The Moscow Mule. What automotive feature, first introduced by Cadillac in 1953, allowed drivers to adjust their seat position with the push of a button? Power seats. What common kitchen container, introduced by Earl Tupper in the late 1940s but popularised in 1950s through home parties, featured an airtight seal? Tupperware. What revolutionary synthetic fabric, introduced by DuPont in 1951, was used for stockings and became an alternative to silk? That was nylon. What food preparation technique involving sealing in food in a bag and cooking it in water in precise temperature was developed in the 50s, but only recently became popular in home kitchens? That was sous vide. What advertising icon created in 1954 was known for his yellow raincoat and association with canned tuna? Charlie the Tuna. What social trend among college students involved squeezing as many people as possible into a telephone booth or small car? Phone booth stuffing or Volkswagen stuffing? What type of television program featuring panels of celebrities guessing the occupation of contestants became extremely popular in the 1950s? Game shows, or specifically, What's My Line? What decorative item, often made of fiberglass and featuring an asymmetrical design, became a hallmark of 1950s modern homes? Starburst clock. What American automobile manufacturer introduced the first mass-produced hardtop convertible in 1957? Ford, specifically the Ford Fairlane 500 Skyliner. What kitchen floor covering, often featuring colourful speckled patterns, was introduced in the 50s as an affordable alternative to linoleum? Vinyl flooring. And your last one, what fashion designer's new look featuring nipped waists and full skirts dominated women's fashion in the early 1950s? Christian Dior. So, how did you do today? Drop your score in the comments below and, of course, like and subscribe so you get notified every time we post a new quiz. And join us next time on Quiz Time.